With the improvements to Apple's reminders in iOS 17 and macOS Sonoma, is it now any better than one of the best task managers on the market today? That's the question I am asking in this video, and if you're curious which app I'm talking about, well, that of course is Todoist. Now, I had to set up a little bit of a criteria. How are we going to judge whether Reminders is better than Todoist or not? Well, that criteria is going to come down to how quickly is it to collect something, how easy is it to organize, and how well does it show me what I need to do so I can get on and do my work. Essentially, the foundations of COD. And if you're not sure about what COD means, that stands for collect, organize, and do. Now, let's starting off with collecting. What is the most important thing when it comes to collecting? Well, the most important thing when it comes to collecting is how fast you can get something into the system. And on this particular area, Reminders is absolutely brilliant if you're using a mobile device, because it's integrated with Siri. So as long as you are comfortable using Siri and you know which list you want to send a task to, it's just as simple as getting Siri to add something to your list. Now, here is one of the problems areas where Todoist have always had difficulties, because Todoist sounds very similar to to-do list, and Siri often has very great difficulty not understanding the difference between the two. Now, if you're very good with shortcuts, there is a way around this. You can go into shortcuts, you can set up a complicated shortcut, although you guys I know who are very good with shortcuts will tell me it's not complicated at all. Trust me, with my brain, it's very complicated and you can get around it, but if it comes down to collecting on a mobile device, then Reminders is a lot better than Todoist. However, Todoist does have the widget on the home screen, which now my finger muscle memory has got so good at adding stuff to it that it's really, we're talking fractions of a second faster. Now, there is one area though where Reminders is not so good at, and that is when you're collecting on your desktop, laptop or iMac, for example. Reminders is terrible there. There is no keyboard shortcut to universally add anything. Todoist, you can set up a keyboard shortcut and it doesn't matter what application you're in. If you suddenly remember you have to do something, you just engage the keyboard shortcut, you get the dialog box, and bang, you can send stuff straight into your Todoist. So on this particular one, I'm going to call it evens, simply because Reminders is very good on mobile devices, but not very good on desktop, whereas on mobile devices, Todoist is okay, and on desktops, it's brilliant. So I'm going to call that one a draw. Now, what about organizing the stuff that you have collected? Well, here, I think I'm going to have to give the nod to Todoist. Todoist is so much more seamless across all the devices. Even on a mobile device, it's really easy to organize stuff, particularly on an iPad. And on a desktop, it's a dream, just dragging and dropping stuff into the appropriate folders. With Reminders, you can drag and drop. You can do a lot of stuff within the task itself, but it's a lot less smooth. And for some reason, even though it's an Apple-owned device, most of us are likely to be doing our organizing from our desktops, and that's where Reminders is actually quite weak. So it does make it rather difficult to drag and drop. It's not so seamless. You can still do it. Plus, with Todoist, you can multi-select a number of tasks and drag them into the appropriate folder. With Reminders, you cannot do that. Certainly, you cannot do that on a desktop. And that means you have to go into individually and drag them to the appropriate folder. So when it comes to organizing, I am afraid that that nod is going to go to Todoist. It's just so much more seamless, and it seems to be a lot more featured. So therefore we're now looking at Todoist 2, Reminders 1. And finally, getting to doing our work. How easy is it to see what needs to be done on a daily basis? Now, in this particular instance, over the last couple of years, Reminders has come a long way. We now have tagging, and we also have the ability to create smart lists. Todoist has had this for a very long time. In fact, as far as I remember, Todoist has had this probably since day one, where we've been able to add labels and create filters. If anything, I would say that Reminders is a little bit easier to create those smart lists or filters because it's just a little bit more intuitive. Todoist, you have to kind of think a little bit harder, although when you get used to it, it's not too bad. But I tend to find that Apple Reminders to create smart lists or filtered lists is a lot easier. I should also point out that both Todoist and Reminders allows you to pin a list to the top or into the sidebar, so you can get quick access to a filtered list. For example, today's focus or today's objectives or whatever you want to do. For example, salespeople may have today's calls, other people may want to, like in my case, today's writing. Whatever you want to be doing, you can create the right filters or smart lists, as Reminders calls them. So in this particular case, that is pretty much equal. But once again, I think it comes back down to where are you doing your most important work? Several years ago, when I was running around the city, visiting clients all day, I would have had to have said Reminders as it is today would have been better than Todoist because I was working mainly from a mobile device throughout the day. Today, I work generally from the office where I need a quick way of getting stuff into my system, and Todoist in that case is so much better. So if it comes to like doing the work, if we're going to continue with this scoring, I'm going to call it a draw simply because Reminders smart lists is a little bit easier to make than Todoist filters. But in that case, I will give it a draw. So we're still looking though at Todoist will have 3 points, Reminders has 2. But it's getting a lot closer. And that means that if Reminders is getting a lot closer to being as good as Todoist, this is just brilliant for the whole task management market. If you want to compete in this market, you have to be good. Now, the great thing about Todoist is they are doing an incredible amount of improvements. It is just getting better and better and better. And one thing I should point out that this year Reminders has now given us the board view. Todoist gave that as a couple of years ago. So you can actually do your project planning in a Kanban board type situation, which is really, really useful. But overall, I think for me personally, because I know I'm going to get so many comments asking, are you switching from Todoist? No, I'm not switching from Todoist. And now the main reason is as I mentioned before, I am using my laptop far more often than I use a mobile device. My mobile device is essentially a collecting tool, while Reminders is marginally faster at collecting just because of the Siri integration. I have to admit that I can collect into Todoist so much faster than I used to be able to do. So it's really, we're talking a margin call. It's so tiny, it's not enough for me to switch. Would I switch in the future? Probably not, simply because one of the key things about a task manager for me is that it becomes part of what I do every day. I don't have to think about getting something into my system. I've used Todoist for 10 years or more now, and it's just automatic. It's just a muscle memory for me. I don't have the time or the willpower to go through that learning process again. I've got a sweet system. It's right in the sweet spot of collecting and organizing. And as I pointed out, Reminders doesn't allow me to multi-select tasks to move to a folder. It certainly doesn't do on the desktop. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the desktop where I do my planning and also do my processing. And therefore, it's not really something that's going to work for me yet. But the great thing is Apple have turned their attention to the desktop app, to Reminders I should say, and who knows, next year it might get an even bigger update, in which case Todoist have to keep working very hard. But I know those guys at Todoist are always working hard, and I'm sure they will be ahead of the game as they are right now. Thank you so much. Now, I should point out, if you want to learn how I have my Todoist set up right now, This video here shows you exactly how I have it set up.